Welcome to this episode of YD Drives the Future. Today we delve into the often unspoken issue of driving anxiety. Our guest, Nadia Adesi, a registered social worker and psychotherapist, will shed light on how this condition is far more prevalent than we might assume.
It's definitely something I see a lot, but there was a study, and I think it was in April 2023, that found 66% of Americans who drive do experience driving anxiety, which is really high.
How it is not limited to being a driver.
A lot of what we see with people who have anxiety are passengers. Whether they were in a driving accident in the past as a passenger, as a driver, just getting back into the car or getting into the car overall makes them feel anxious.
And emphasizes how causes of driving anxiety occur more often than you may expect.
1/3 of Americans experience a traumatic experience with driving, which causes them either to have driving anxiety or to have PTSD.
In this conversation, we'll discuss practical steps you can take to deal with driving anxiety and the types of treatments that may help you or a loved one overcome this condition.
There's a gold standard treatment, which is called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the best treatment for somebody who's experienced driving anxiety. And then the other gold standard treatment is called exposure response prevention. And it's a type of cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's essentially exposing yourself to situations that make you feel anxious to become desensitized to them.
Driving anxiety is a complex topic, and strategies may vary for each individual. But we encourage listeners to use this podcast as a jumping off point to reach out for help and explore what works best for them. Welcome to YD Drives the Future, a podcast where we cover all aspects of driving education and road safety. For over 50 years, Young Drivers of Canada has been dedicated to educating drivers of all skill levels to change their driving behaviors for the safety of all road users. Let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to YD Drives the Future. My name is Ursula Romeo, one of your hosts, and today I'm here with Nadia Adesi, social worker and psychotherapist. Welcome, Nadia.
Hi, Ursula. I'm so excited to be here and talk all about driving anxiety.
We're so happy to have you. Before we get into it, why don't you give us a little bit of a background of what you do and who you are?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I'm a registered social worker and psychotherapist. I'm also a content creator on social media where I share tips and tricks for anyone struggling with their mental health, including tips and tricks for driving anxiety. I run my own private practice, but before I was doing that, I worked for a private clinic that specialized in motor vehicle accidents and helping people get back on the road who experienced extreme anxiety from driving.
Oh, okay. So why don't we get into our conversation that we're going to have today about driving anxiety, and why don't we start off with a definition? Can you explain what driving anxiety is?
Yeah. So driving anxiety is when you feel fearful or anxious when you are around or when you are in a vehicle. So it can be a car, it can be a public transit, or it can be an airplane.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know it was other vehicles as well. I thought it was just being a driver in your own vehicle.
No, I see with people who have anxiety are passengers. Whether they were in a driving accident in the past as a passenger, as a driver, just getting back into the car or getting into the car overall makes them feel anxious. And another common thing we see is pedestrians feeling anxious about driving. Or drivers around them. If they're walking on the street and they have to cross at a light, they might feel really anxious not knowing what the driver is going to do.
Okay.
And the cars around. Yeah.
And is driving anxiety common? Is it something you see a lot?
It's definitely something I see a lot, but there was a study, and I think it was in April 2023, that found 66% of Americans who drive do experience driving anxiety, which is really high. I think if you look at your inner circle, there's going to be somebody that you know there that experiences driving anxiety and maybe just doesn't talk about it enough because they feel some shame or some embarrassment surrounding it. But it's a lot more common than we think.
And do you know if it's more common in men or women or younger adults or older?
The study specifically found that it's more common in women.
Why do people get driving anxiety?
I think similar to what driving anxiety is, there's a wide variety of reasons why people might get it. The biggest thing we see, even going back to referencing the study, is 1/3 of Americans experience a traumatic experience with driving, which causes them either to have driving anxiety or to have PTSD. But there's, like I said, a variety of reasons. It can be that you have anxiety in other areas in your life and it also manifests in the car. It can be because what we're exposed to on TV and media and radio with driving accidents that make us anxious before we even enter a car. Or it can come out of nowhere and there could be no logical reason that we can connect it to.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's so many different types of anxiety that we experience that I'll see even in my private practice where somebody is unable to understand where the anxiety comes from. So I have anxiety of heights, but nothing's ever happened to me on a roller coaster or really high up. So I don't know why I have it. Sometimes there's no logical explanation as to why we have anxiety, but the good thing is that there's always treatments to work on them.
And how would someone know? How would I know if I had driving anxiety? Is there like specific things? Is it...
Yeah. So you would know based on the way that you feel. Our bodies talk to us all the time. So before we go into anxious situations, we might start to sweat. We might start to have heart palpitations. We might just start to feel physically uncomfortable. So that's your body warning you that you don't feel safe in this moment. Another common thing with driving anxiety is intrusive thoughts. So when somebody is driving in a car and they're on a bridge and they see water, they might get that intrusive thought to drive off the bridge. Or if they see a pedestrian, they might get this intrusive image in their mind that something might happen to that pedestrian. And this intrusive thought anxiety is one that I know I talked about taboo in the past, but this is something that's so taboo because people are so ashamed of these thoughts because it doesn't match who they are with their values and it's not what they want to happen, but they come out of nowhere. So I think if you're driving and you're experiencing intrusive thoughts, it might be a way of your mind telling you you're feeling anxious right now.
And do you have like coping strategies or something that people can do if they have driving anxiety or ways to overcome it? Can you overcome it?
Yeah, you can absolutely overcome it. Doesn't mean that it's not going to come up here and there, but it can get to the point where it's not preventing you from driving or doing what you want to do. There's a gold standard treatment, which is called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the best treatment for somebody who's experienced driving anxiety. And essentially, it's a type of therapy that helps us challenge our thoughts to make our actions and our behaviors different, which is hard to understand. So I'll explain it trying to use like actual visuals. Picture a triangle. At the top, you have a thought. Here you have an emotion, and here you have a behavior. And in the middle, you have a triggering event. So the triggering event is that you have to drive. Your thought is, I'm really scared of driving. Your emotion is, I'm feeling really anxious right now and fearful. And your behavior is, I'm just going to go back inside and not go where I have to go. So cognitive behavioral therapy gets you at that thought and gets you to challenge it so that your emotions and your behaviors that follow also change. So maybe the thought is, I'm feeling really anxious about driving, but I've done it before, so I know I can do it again. And I know that I know safe practices with driving, so I'm going to trust myself. Then your emotion is, I'm a little bit anxious, but I'm feeling more confident. And then your behavior is, I'm going to get in the car and only go where I need to go. Does that make sense? Like cognitive behavioral therapy really teaches you how to challenge your thoughts before they turn into emotions and before they turn into behaviors.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I get that.
Yeah. I like to use the example of like, you're 15 years old, you go to the mall and you see your two friends at the mall. Your thought is, they left me out, they didn't invite me, like that's really rude. Your emotion is that you're really sad, and your behavior is you go home and you block them off everything. Whereas your original thought can be, oh, they're at the mall, how can I challenge that they didn't leave me out? Maybe they saw each other here. Maybe they thought I was busy. Maybe they made these plans really last minute. Then your emotions might be confused, but now your behavior is, let me talk to them about it instead of going straight to blocking them. So it's just like a thought process and a challenge that you can do with yourself or with a licensed therapist that can help those negative thoughts turn into more realistic ones.
Yeah, and it really changes your outlook and it really changes, I guess, your behavior.
Yeah, and it takes practice, obviously. You're not going to be able to change your emotions like this, but at least it gives you a different perspective into what you're so tunnel vision to seeing originally.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, and then the other gold standard treatment is called exposure response prevention. And it's a type of cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's essentially exposing yourself to situations that make you feel anxious to become desensitized to them.
Okay, so like challenging yourself?
It's getting in the car,
okay,
pretty much. But it's working really, really slow with a licensed professional to have the steps to do it. So let's do an example right here that doesn't have to be about driving anxiety, and then we can make it about driving anxiety. What's something you're scared of? or anxious about?
Spiders.
Spiders. Okay, that's a good one. So what an ERP therapist would do is they would create a ladder with what's the biggest thing that makes you anxious about spiders? Touching them, grabbing them.
Yeah, just picturing them around or like them crawling on me.
Okay, so a spider crawling on you, that would give you a 10 out of 10 anxiety.
Yes.
Okay, so if I was an ERP therapist, I would create a ladder and I would put that at the top of the ladder and list it 10 out of 10.
Okay.
What are things below that that would make you a little bit less anxious? So,
I'm seeing it.
okay, so let's say seeing a real spider. What would that make you out of 10?
7.
Okay, so maybe that would be below that. How about closing your eyes and envisioning a spider in the grass?
4.
A 4, okay. How about closing your eyes and envisioning a spider crawling up your arm?
5.
Okay, so we got a 4, a 5, a 7, and a 10.
Okay.
Let's think of something that could be a 1 to 3. That would make you a little bit less anxious about spiders. Watching TV and seeing a spider on the TV?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we would start with as the first thing to expose you to desensitize you. In a therapy session or on your own, if you felt safe enough, you would put on a YouTube video, you put on TV, and you would just look at a spider.
Okay.
So now if that anxiety is at a 3, you're going to keep doing it until that anxiety gets to a 1.
Okay.
Might take 1 week, might take 1 month. As soon as it gets to a 1, you work on the next thing, which we determined was picturing a spider in the grass. So when you're closing your eyes, you're picturing a spider in the grass. Once again, maybe that's 1 week, maybe it's 1 month until you become completely desensitized. Now we're going to work our way up all the way to getting a spider to be in your hand, crawling around your hand.
Okay.
I know right now it makes you feel a 10, but by the time you get there, your anxiety is going to be significantly decreased. We would do the exact same thing with driving anxiety. So you would tell somebody to put on a movie where there's a car. Maybe that's a 1 or a 2 for them. They keep watching it. Then you get them to close their eyes and picture themselves as a passenger. Close their eyes, picture themselves as a driver. Go in the car and then leave the car.
Okay.
Go in the car, start the car. Go in the car, start the car, move your mirrors around. That's it. In the car, start the car, move your mirrors around, drive down the street. Drive a little bit further until they get more comfortable and become desensitized to that original fear that they had.
So you really work your way up.
You work your way up.
Point.
Yeah, and it sounds scary, like right away when we went to it and I said to you, like picturing the spider in your hands, you had a physical reaction to it. But eventually you would get to the point where like, I'm ready to do this because you work so hard to get there.
And I guess it could be different for everyone. Like you were saying, like some people it could take them weeks, some people it can take them months.
Yeah. Some people it can take years. And that's the thing. Like if you're hearing this and you're feeling intimidated, there's no timeline. If your goal is to just become a better driver, that's your goal. You don't have to do it in a week or a month or a year. You'll do it once you feel confident. You don't have to push yourself.
Okay. That's really, really cool. Is there any other coping or strategies or anything else that you...
Yeah, so those are things to get you into the car. There's things that we can do in the car. The biggest thing you want to do is you want to learn mindfulness or staying present or grounding yourself before being in a car, because one of the biggest things about driving safety is being present in the moment. You don't want your mind to be wandering around. You don't want to be distracted. You want to be focusing on what's happening here and now. So doing things outside of the car to prepare you for being more present in the car. So whether that's 5 minutes a day working on mindfulness meditation, there's one that I like called progressive muscle relaxation that helps you really pay attention to the physical sensations in your body to place you in the present moment. You can find those on YouTube. Just search progressive muscle relaxation on YouTube. There's videos that range from 5 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on what you like. Then we'll do another thing right now, just me and you. Name me 4 things around that you can see.
The plant, the microphone, a water bottle, and shoes.
Okay, name me 3 things you can hear.
Your voice, my voice.
It's very quiet in here.
Traffic from outside.
Okay. Name 2 things you can touch.
The chair and the plant.
1 thing you can taste.
My water.
Okay. You are currently as present as you can possibly be. Like you really grounded yourself in this moment by focusing on your 5, well, we did 4 senses, but usually by focusing on your 5 senses of what's around. You can do that before getting into a car to make sure that you're grounded and you're as present as possible.
Oh, so you just say those things to yourself.
Yeah, say them out loud. Or if you're with someone you can and you're feeling anxious in a car, tell them, say like, ask me about my 5 senses right now so I can ground myself.
Oh,
help you
that's
stay
actually
present.
really good to know, even just in other aspects of life as well.
Yeah, it works honestly for many, many people regarding a variety of different anxieties.
That's really interesting. getting back to like the driving part of it and instructors, how can driving instructors help, or what can they do for people with driving anxiety?
Yeah, I think it's a twofold question. So one, I feel like when you're learning how to drive, having an instructor there is like a security blanket. You're feeling safe. You know they're the experts. You know they know what to do. So when you're working on building that confidence in driving, I think it's crucial if you have the resources to have a driving instructor to help you, because it'll just build your confidence. Also learning the skills that they have that they're so trained in that they give to you, you know you're getting the best service possible. And then for driving instructors, it's just, I know most of them are, is just becoming aware of what the anxiety might look like. So you might have a 16-year-old in your car who doesn't feel comfortable enough or even know what they're experiencing. So things to look out for, and so that's my third time mentioning it, but it's because this happens to me: sweaty palms, or hyperventilating, heavy breathing, feeling like your stomach hurts, like looking out for these subtle physical reactions in your students to know that maybe something is wrong. Maybe you need to take it down a notch, or you need to just ask them like, hey, what do you need from me right now?
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Actually, I was speaking to a driving instructor not too long ago, and he actually experienced something like that, where the student was like not there. Like he was speaking to him, and the student just wasn't being cohesive or wasn't giving him the same answers that he had in the past. And he knew at that point, he said, you know what, we have to cut this lesson today because something's off, and it's dangerous for you. It's dangerous for me. And maybe we can like talk through it and figure it out. But
yeah, that's great that the driving instructor was able to realize that. And it touched on something we didn't talk about yet: a physical sensation or a mental sensation of driving anxiety is dissociation. So when you're in a really heightened state of anxiety, or if you've experienced a traumatic event in the past, your body might get to a point where it just zones out because it doesn't feel safe anymore. And that's how you're keeping yourself safe. So maybe in this situation, from what it sounds like, this student just, their body couldn't take it anymore. Their minds couldn't take it anymore. So they completely zoned out and disconnected from their body because they didn't feel safe in the present moment. So it is scary to experience dissociation when driving, because it's almost like you're not there. And that's definitely a huge symptom to look out for, and something that, once again, that mindfulness is really going to bring you back into your body and help you move on to the next step.
Do you have any tips or anything you can offer someone that's starting out and might feel anxious or feel like they have driving anxiety, or maybe they're not even aware of it, but something that you can leave them with that can help them?
The biggest thing that fuels our anxiety even more is avoidance. So the more you avoid something, the scarier and heavier it feels. So I'm not telling you to jump in a car right away, but go through those processes that we talked about. Look into getting professional help, once again, if there's resources for you. If not, there's a lot of credible information out there that can help you learn how to self-regulate that anxiety before getting in a car. But just don't push it out too long, because so many people do it. You are able to do it, but the more you avoid it, the scarier it is.
Okay, so just start working on it and get yourself there. And
with any type of anxiety in general, our reaction is always going to be like, if I avoid it, then I don't have to deal with it and those scary feelings won't come. But it's actually doing the opposite. Every time you avoid it, the scarier feelings get bigger and bigger, and to the point where you don't even want to act on it. So tackle it as soon as you can.
Yeah, of course, that makes so much sense. And I mean, driving is something that it's almost like you really will probably come to a point where you can't avoid it.
No, for many people. I mean, also depending where you live and what's available. But yeah, for many people, it's something that is really hard to avoid. And I think our anxiety manifests those things in a lot of ways, which is scary and unfortunate. But you don't want it to get to the point where you absolutely need to drive and you are so nervous to get into that car.
For sure.
You want to be preventative as much as you can.
Are there any other negative ways that people would cope with the anxiety other than the avoidance?
Yeah. So avoidance is the biggest one, I would say. When somebody's anxious about something, they're going to do everything in their power to avoid it. Another negative way that we cope with anxiety is by shaming ourselves to try to get out of the anxiety. So we have that negative self-talk, like, you're so dumb, why are you doing this? Or like, just be brave, just go do what you have to do. And that's honestly not helping us in any way. Instead, it's just making us feel worse about ourselves, and our confidence is decreasing even more. So if you notice you're having that negative self-talk, just know that that's contributing to your anxiety, and you want to try to approach yourself with more compassion. So you want to try more affirmations, not so positive, like, you're amazing, you're the best driver. That's not going to work either. But like, you're experiencing stress right now, you're doing the best you can. You're going to have a plan in action. You're going to try to do what you can. The final thing is when we experience anxiety, we really try to control other areas of our life to the point where it might be impulsive or dangerous. So when you feel uncertainty in one area, like you don't have control over driving, you might try to get control in other things like overeating, overspending, over engaging in illegal activities. It might be really impulsive. So you want to make sure you're not projecting one insecurity into a bunch of other areas of your life.
Awesome. That's so great. Thank you so much for the tips. Thank you for the strategies, the coping strategies. If there's anything else you would like to touch on, or if there's anything else we missed.
No, I think we talked about everything. Obviously, driving anxiety is a complex topic. And like I said, so many people experience it. So it's not a one size fits all. You really have to find what works for you. When it comes to trauma, like a lot of the techniques we talked about were about anxiety and anxious thoughts. When it comes to trauma, there's other forms of support that might help. I would look into somatic types of therapy, which is really working within your body to feel safe, before I would look into cognitive behavioral therapy. But I really think we got everything.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for those amazing tips. I think it will help a lot of people, especially if that many people have anxiety while driving. We also encourage you to check out our anxiety driving program. You can find the link in our show notes. And it just kind of gets into more detail about what Nadia spoke about, some other coping mechanisms, and some things that can really help you. Thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you.